Well, welcome everybody to another Gathering Update Zoom as we help you prepare to lead your group to the 2025 Youth Gathering in New Orleans. Julian and I will be walking beside you virtually, of course, as you prepare to attend Endure just next summer. We'll continue to host these Gathering Update Zooms leading up to the gathering on the second Thursday of every month. Each Zoom consists of 30 minutes of information and then 30 minutes of open office hours where you can come and ask our staff questions about leading your group. Just a reminder that if you have a very specific question towards your congregation, to send us an email that's listed on the slides there, or give us a call and we can help you out with that question. But if you've got some general questions about the gathering or leading a group, feel free to stick around afterwards and we'll help you. In case you haven't met us yet, I'm Meredith and I'm here with DCE Juliana Schultz. And we'll be talking tonight about a couple of things that is going to be helpful in your planning for the gathering. We know that you guys are really busy this time of year. Lent is a very busy season for our church workers and our adult leaders and our volunteers. So as you gear up for Easter in a couple of weeks, we're thankful that you've taken the time to join us live or watch a recording of us. But before we get into all the really important stuff, we have two announcements to make moving forward. So you guys heard us talk, and you've probably seen us on social media. There is 1 day left to apply to serve as a gathering ambassador. I just checked before we got on the Zoom, and we just hit 350 applicants that have committed to serving you and your youth at the gathering next summer, which is a huge deal. But the application is open for one more day. It closes tomorrow, March 15th at 11:59 p.m. So if you have an adult leader in your congregation that maybe didn't get selected to lead your group but still wants to serve the gathering in some way, shape, or form, send them that application. It's at lcmsgathering.com/volunteer.
Yeah, so some of you might be asking kind of what do ambassadors do? If this maybe is your first gathering, maybe that's a term you haven't heard before. Ambassadors are adults who are 26 and older, and we take them all the way. Doesn't matter if you're retired, right? If you are able to make it to the gathering, we can use those gifts and skills, and they're going to have a variety of different gifts and skills, right? So you're going to come in, and we have some of those ambassadors who help at critical places on the interactive floor, or who might be helping in info booths. These might be adults who are assisting with moving people in and out of mass events, or on traffic because we walk between the convention center and the Superdome. Various other places we see ambassadors helping.
We see people behind the scenes. If you're like, I just really want to work on a computer or answer phones, we have lots of people working behind the scenes, making the magic happen. We also have people, did you say stadium, convention center, hotels?
Yeah, we have ambassadors who are at every single one of our hotels, who are there to help support all of the groups that are in that particular hotel and care for them. There's tons and tons of ways that we can use an ambassador. So if you're like, I'm not sure if I have the right skills for that, I have a feeling we can put your gifts and skills to work. So like Meredith said, we really want to encourage you, if perhaps you have an adult who'd really like to experience the gathering, but you have too many adults going. We've actually heard that from quite a few groups. But also, if you're just, you love the gathering, it's been a great experience for you, and maybe you don't have a group or you're not connected, we would love to have you register as an ambassador, but you got to do it now.
Yes.
Right? So if you've been an ambassador in the chat, maybe feel free to chime in about either your experience or what you did, especially if that helps other folks who are thinking about that.
And if you are still waiting for somebody to say the Community Life Builder application is open or the CLB application is open, this is it. I just had somebody last week come up and ask me, like, when's the Community Life Builder thing going to open? And I was like, it kind of is open.
It is open.
So if you have somebody who is familiar with that older language from the gathering, remind them that we did change the name to Gathering Ambassadors, and we are going back to yellow shirts. It might be helpful if you want to give an idea of what the Gathering Ambassador registration process is. So it is $400 to register as a Gathering Ambassador, but that includes your wristband into all of the gathering programming. It includes your housing, and it includes a travel stipend, or just travel.
Yeah.
So that $400 does cover a lot of things, and we are so grateful for the people that committed. We know that that's a huge commitment. So thank you guys for encouraging those adult leaders and getting them to come to the gathering and serve in many and various ways.
And ambassadors aren't the only way you can serve.
Correct.
Right? So if you're like, I'm not sure I can register between now and tomorrow, that's okay. There's still plenty of ways you can serve. If you are 19 to 25, our young adult volunteers, our YAVs, our Orange Nation, that application is going to open up in July and run through the end of the 2024. That's a great way for your young adults who've experienced the gathering to be able to come and to serve. If you've ever been to a gathering, you're familiar with all the different places that those orange shirts are, those young adult volunteers. Both the gathering ambassadors and your young adult volunteers are going to come in advance of the gathering by several days and get specific training on tasks, on the gathering as a whole, but then also on the specific tasks that they're going to be doing. Team Flex is open all the way through spring of 2025. And Team Flex is a little different in that it's not going to have a specific overall training you need to come early for. And in fact, Team Flex will let you flex your time, right, to be able to serve as many days as you would like, whether that's the whole gathering or a single day, whether that's 4 hours or 8 hours or more. We will accommodate all of those different kinds of things. So for every day that you serve on Team Flex, then you get credentials for that day to come and join the rest of the programming. So that's another option if you have somebody who wants to serve but maybe can't make the gathering ambassador deadline. Team Flex is a great option for you to consider as well later on if you need to.
Absolutely. So let's talk very briefly about National 24, National Lutheran Youth Workers Conference. We are honestly blown away by the response from all of our adult leaders, our young adults, and our youth that are wanting to come to National. We are just about to max out our capacity at the conference. So our office is looking for some different options to increase our capacity. We put a poll in the LCMS Youth Ministry group, Facebook group. If you haven't seen that or haven't taken that poll, feel free to hop over there and help us out and tell us that you're coming or not coming or planning to come, and that would just help us out. I know that I'm really excited about National. So,
it's it's standalone youth ministry conference. So even if you are coming to the gathering, it's going to be full of great material. But in particular, we're preparing lots of different things to help orient you to both the city and to help you plan and prepare your event.
Yeah, and we're going to continue to make updates about National and as well as the gathering. So we always encourage you to check the gathering website or check our social media as we make those updates frequently. And hopefully we get to see you, a number of you guys in New Orleans in July. So let's talk about some things that you guys might have missed on the Adult Leader Resource page since last month.
Missed it. I think all of you have seen all of this and now you're really sick of me talking about it. But we're going to mention it again because we want to make sure everybody is aware. So this is our Adult Leader Resource page. It's going to get updated between now all the way up till just right before after the gathering.
Yeah,
we'll drop resources. So if you are in need of a place to be able to go and get all of the different component parts that you're going to need for your meetings or your planning process, this is where you're going to go. It's where you're going to get your 18-month calendar. It's where you're going to get your Excel sheet, right? Where you're going to do your budget and all of the different components there. It's where you're going to be able to, do we have a list on this next slide?
So.
I think we do. There we go. Gathering key terms. This is a new piece that we've got for those of you, especially who are doing this for the first time, who are already like, there is a lot of lingo. There's a lot of lingo that comes with the gathering. So it helps you kind of decode what we're saying in some of those places. Particularly, we love our theological foundation. And Reverend Dr. Peter Nasker did an amazing job of helping us to really think about what the theme Endure is about and our verses there that we're going to be focusing on. And then we have some getting into fundraising, some pieces there. I know some people are already starting their fundraising process. Anybody going to be doing an Easter breakfast I don't know.
I'll be attending at Easter.
I will.
breakfast.
I'm having flashbacks of getting to church at 4 a.m. to prep for the Easter breakfast.
I love those pancakes.
Yeah. And then we have 2 new pieces that I referenced last month. So that's going to be our child safety and background checks. So really, it's a piece about risk management in general, things that you need to be thinking about. It's going to particularly encourage you and give you some instructions on how you should be thinking about doing background checks and other training for your adult leaders who are going to be coming to the gathering. We really do want to encourage you to be able to go in and be confident that you understand what your church's policies and procedures are, as well as that you're making sure that you're doing the appropriate background checks and training for each of your adult leaders to be able to keep both your adult leaders and your young people safe as they travel to the gathering and back. So information there, it's pretty short, I promise it's not lengthy, but it's going to have a lot of helpful stuff, as well as group covenant. So one of the things we hope every group does is put together a personalized covenant between all of the members of the group that are going to be able to say, hey, this is how we're going to behave together. These are the expectations that we have. The group covenant document also includes a technology covenant. So if you're thinking about how you're going to handle screens, phones, all the different pieces of technology at the gathering. This has got some places for you to be thinking about that, talking about it as a group and figuring that out. We know that groups have a wide variety of ways that they deal with technology, so this is going to be able to kind of walk you through how do you think about and how are you planning for using technology at the gathering.
Perfect. I think that's all the announcements we have for everybody today. So let's dive into what we were going to talk about this month, which I know you're super excited about.
I am super excited about it.
So we have released our very own book, 7 Practices of Healthy Youth Ministry, written by Juliana and Mark Kiesling in the Youth Ministry Office. And we are really excited to have worked with Concordia Publishing House to make that available for our adult leaders. So back in January, with the help of CPH, we released this book.
Yeah.
I know that you don't just wake up one day and decide to write a book.
It's not. I was against it for many years.
So I know that this book has been years in the making.
Yeah.
So why don't you give us just a very brief history of how we got here?
So 7 Practices of Healthy Youth Ministry. If you've been around for gatherings for the last little bit, you will know that we started talking about the 7 Practices of Healthy Youth Ministry in the 2019 gathering. And we started kind of putting those component pieces. It's where we put together the first sort of descriptions of what we thought the 7 practices were, and our first magazine that we made available to adult leaders. And that really came out of, if you took a step back, came out of our 2016-2017 research on millennials and the LCMS, and the book that came out of that, which was the Relationships Count. So we did this research project, and we wrote a book, and then people said, okay, so what are we supposed to do with that? And we said, okay, well, let's figure that out. So what we did is, that's not the slide I thought we had. We went back and we looked at scripture, we looked at our theology and how we talk about how God talks about how we care well for young people in our midst, in our congregation and community. Like I said, we did our research, that research project that we did back in 16-17, which is really a long time ago.
Yeah. Doesn't seem like that long.
And what we found in that research project, as well as what we saw in things like places like Fuller and Barna, Pew, and those kinds of places, we talked to practitioners. So if you were at the 2019 gathering, we listened to some of the feedback you had. If you still have that magazine, you'll know that the practices have changed. The language has changed a little bit. Since that time, we adapted because we listened to what practitioners said both before, during, and we still are listening to practitioners as we talk about that. And one of the great things is that we had practitioners who, one, helped contribute to the book in different interviews, but then also are preparing to join us at places like National to talk about how they're using the 7 practices or how they use the 7 practices in their congregations. And then we looked both at history. If you read the book, you'll know that I talk a little bit about Walther League. If anybody wants to give Walther League a shout out in the chat. But even talk about other things that we've done. And we talk about how we're continuing to learn about youth ministry and how to care well for young people. So it came out of a lot of places. mostly started with the research, but if people are at the gathering, they've last couple gatherings, you've heard us talk about it in all the different places that we're resourcing our adult leaders in particular.
So for those of us, not me, I've heard of them a lot. For those of us in the chat and maybe tuning in at a recording who haven't heard of the 7 practices,
Yeah.
give us the rundown.
All right, we're gonna do this really quick because we only have like less, I don't have very long, right? But just to give you an idea of what you're gonna be walking into in the book. First of all, let me back up because I've gotten this question a few times, and that is, I have a 7 Practices magazine, how is that different than the book? In the magazine, there's a lot of resources that are interspersed in between like kind of 1 to 2 page descriptions of the practices. The book is those, just us talking about those practices expanded. So it's a lot more about what we would talk about if we were presenting 7 practices. So very different than what you have if you have the magazine, hopefully still worth the investment for the book. But we talk about congregations that have warmth, challenge, and grace. That's sort of the environmental words that we use to describe the community, the congregation. We have people, supportive adults, and engaged parents, both critical for healthy youth ministry, and that the congregation has opportunities to serve and learn for our young people. And then as a result of our youth ministry, or sort of that process that we want our young people to be involved in during that high school years, would be that they deeply understand their baptismal faith, they develop a resilient identity in Christ, and then they live out their unique vocations. So those would be the 7 practices. Certainly, there's a lot more words that went into the book, but you can kind of get a sense of what we talk about when we talk about the 7 practices here.
So we incorporate the 7 practices into all of youth ministry, and that includes the gathering, correct?
Right.
So during the days of the gathering, you guys as adult leaders are going to be able to attend a number of sessions that will cover all the topics of the 7 practices. You'll also be able to go into the youth booth and on the interactive floor to learn more about the practices. Where else are we going to be able to see the 7 practices at the gathering?
Yeah, so you'll hear the language of 7 practices all in the pre-event resources, right? So for example, next month we're gonna be releasing a piece that's talking about how you pick adult leaders and the things that you want your adult leaders to be prepared to do as a part of the gathering. We're going to talk about supportive adults really heavily in that piece, as well as engaged parents. So you're going to see, we're going to have a whole piece about how you engage parents while you're at the gathering, right? So you're going to see them in those pre-event resources. Like you said, youth booth sessions, obviously, our adult leader sessions are going to have, going to help expand on some of those 7 practices materials. As well as a national, but then also in the pre and post gathering studies. So for example, if you were around in the 22 gathering, you know that the year of studies after the gathering really expanded off of a concept out of 7 practices called the 40 End Goals, and really kind of helped resource that out more. So you're going to see it on the pre and post gathering studies that are going to be available on the youth eSource. So you're going to hear about it. I'm only seeing a couple people who are like, yeah, we've heard this before. You're going to hear about it quite a lot. And so we really do want to encourage folks to engage with those 7 practices. We think they're really helpful. And it helps us to think about and put the gathering into a perspective that means the gathering isn't just about those 5 days. The gathering is about so much more. And we want the gathering just to be one part of your ongoing healthy youth ministry. And this is how we want to resource you around that.
And especially as, groups are starting to put their, not only their youth together, but also their adult leaders and thinking about the support of adults and what that looks like. I know we talk a lot about how you're a supportive adult, not just chaperoning the trip.
Yeah, right? So. I mean, I think it's easy for us to think about like, okay, which adult leader is going to be the best at driving 17 hours without stopping, which is, I'm going to give you, like, it's an important task. But also, like, thinking about them in terms of supportive adults and helping them to engage in a long-term relationship with the young people. Then the gathering becomes a spot where you can really intensely get to know your young people and carry that forward for years to come. And then the gathering becomes something that's just more than those few days, but that's something that helps you to keep that relationship going into their, out of their high school years, into their young adult years.
Absolutely. So as you guys can tell, we're pretty excited about this book. We're pretty proud of it, and pretty proud to get it into hands of adult leaders around all the LCMS congregations. if you would like to get your copy, I'm gonna drop a link in the chat. You guys can get it from CPH. It is available to order and ship to you guys. However, if you are signed up and registered to come to National this summer, you are going to get a free copy of the book when you get to New Orleans and register.
Woo!
Yeah, so we're very excited about that. So if you can hold off until July, we'll give you a free copy. But if you know somebody else in your congregation that would benefit from having a copy of this book, or maybe you want to put it in your church library, we've dropped the link in the chat. So head over to CPH and order your own copy, another copy, a copy for a friend or a pastor or a DC, your teacher. And we hope that you guys enjoy it, and let us know what you think of it, and let us know how you use the 7 practices in your youth ministry.
Yeah.
There are also, even if I don't get the book, if I have to wait until July to get the book,
Yeah.
where else can I get 7 practices and
Yes.
resources?
So right now you can also get information about the 7 practices on the Youth eSource, and that's totally free. So the basic information sheet about each one of those practices, as well as a discussion guide. We have a short video of us talking about each one of those practices, which is easy because then nobody has to do any reading, right? You can just watch the videos and watch us talk about those videos. It's going to have access to all of the different studies we have that expand on those, as well as other resources that are designed to help you think about the different practices and how you use them in your congregation. Okay.
So for many of you guys, this might be the very first time that you've ever heard of the 7 practices. So we want to open it up. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. And I will say Juliana is like the expert. She wrote the book, so this is the time to talk to the author.
All right, so we're got questions in the chat, or just in general about adult leader resources that we have at the gather, or that we're that you're looking for at the gathering or before the gathering. I appreciate it. There's no silence, like a Zoom webinar silence, as we wait for people to put things in the chat.
We'll also answer any adult leader questions or
Right.
resourcing questions that you guys have about upcoming resources or the youth eSource, or the gathering website and what to look for. Or if you have questions still about volunteering and you are interested in the gathering ambassador position that closes tomorrow, feel free to drop those questions in the chat.
All right, while they're dropping those questions in the chat, Meredith,
Yes.
what food do you suggest these folks eat if they're in New Orleans for a national?
For national.
Yes, this summer.
Ooh. So at the Astor Crown Plaza, just where it's located, there's a restaurant that's like catty corner from it called Redfish Grill. And I think it's some of the best gumbo in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And I will go with anybody who wants to go.
Meredith is like, I will always eat gumbo, which is great. All right, so now we're getting some moulats. Yes, I saw that. Excellent choices. Beignets, always good choices.
If somebody asks, if a group flies to New Orleans, are they placed at a hotel within walking distance? That's awesome because New Orleans is a fabulous city for this because every hotel that we have contracted with is considered walking distance from our facility, so the Superdome and the Convention Center. Now that's not to say it might be a mile or a mile and a half walk, so don't wear flip-flops. And some groups might be closer to the Superdome, so your walk is a little bit shorter at night, or some of you might be closer to the Convention Center, so your walk during the morning is a little bit shorter. But every hotel that we have contracted with is considered walkable in New Orleans.
Which we love, right? So the downside to that though is that those hotels are in not downtown, they're in the business district of New Orleans. And so that means that you are gonna have to do some sort of arrangement to get your group from the airport to your hotel and back to the airport again. So do keep that in mind, right? All right, I'm seeing hotels have breakfast. Some hotels have breakfast, some don't. In New Orleans, it's actually less likely that your hotel is gonna have breakfast because New Orleans is a food city and people want to eat. I am already thinking about New Orleans breakfast and it's making me hungry. Right, so, but we do have some hotels, that's something that will you'll find out once you've been placed into your hotel. Somebody asked, hey, can we sign up, wait, no, that's not, I was looking, Team Flex. Team Flex was the one who came in before. So I'm gonna explain Team Flex again. So Team Flex, in that case, you're gonna apply. The Team Flex people are responsible for their own hotels, their own travel, right? So the cost is on you for that. But you can opt to volunteer for 1 day or every day of the gathering. You can opt to volunteer for a few hours or for a full shift of 8 hours. And you will be given a very specific assignment to do, right? So there's not gonna be a lot of training, so most of the time you're gonna be given maybe one task that we're gonna ask you to do. And we'll have you do that throughout, whenever you're available to do that. So Team Flex gives you the most flexibility, as it were. And because of that, then you have that opening in that application until they're much later. So if that helps, if you have a specific question about Team Flex, we're happy to answer that.
I saw,
what else?
will there be a sign up for sessions this year, or will it be first come, first serve? More than likely, it is going to be first come, first serve. We're not going to be able to sign up for sessions. However, the New Orleans Convention Center is a lot bigger than the Houston Convention Center. So we do have a little bit more space, that gives us more space to put more people in sessions. We have some really great big room spaces for some of those sessions, those bigger sessions. So we know that sessions have gotten increasingly more popular in the last couple gatherings. So we try and make as much room as possible for our young people. But we are not going to be able to sign up to attend those sessions this time.
Will there be shuttles from the airport to the hotels like in Houston? We don't know that answer for sure, right? Because we're still working on our transportation contract with that. I'm looking at my boss and going, we should anticipate that. Yes, that is the plan.
Per participant fee.
Yeah, and there'll be a fee for that as well. But that is what we're having. So somebody asked if we have we have a young person with special needs attending and they need a one-to-one help, does that count to the adult to youth ratio? No, it does not, right? So we have our normal youth to adult ratio. However, if you have somebody who applies and with their registration sends in the special needs form, and you need to have an extra adult for that young person, that does not count against your youth to adult ratio, so you can definitely bring them. We want to make the gathering as accessible as possible for young people who have particular special needs, and so that is one of those accommodations that we can easily make to be able to make that available to them.
We have about 1 minute left.
Oh my
so
goodness.
I'll try and answer.
Okay, here we go.
Gluten-free options in New Orleans. Yes, there are gluten-free options in New Orleans, and then we have a whole team dedicated to food at the gathering.
Yes, we do.
And making sure that our young people have enough food and food that they can eat. So we will have gluten-free options, hopefully at the convention center and the stadium, for those who are needing gluten-free food.
So Lori's asking again about space in special sessions. That is something that you can work out with the special needs team. So when you're filling out your form, where it asks about like what kinds of accommodations you might need, that's something to include. And then our special needs team talks with every group individually to help make sure that they have the right accommodations they need to make it accessible for that young person. So no worries. If you're gonna be at National, we're gonna have somebody from our special needs team there as well if you wanna ask them specific questions. So we wanna make that, and we'll have another Zoom that will be especially about special needs. We would love to answer those questions, but yeah, we try and make as many accommodations as we need to. Is there a list of hotels yet? No, not yet. So that'll come out closer to registration time. All right, did we get everybody? It's time.
It is time. If you still have burning questions, we will stick around. We're gonna take a short 5-minute break, and then we will come back. We're gonna stop the recording, and you guys are free to ask any more questions that you guys have about the gathering. We'll put up the information for our April. It's hard to believe we're already talking about April.
I know, it goes too fast.
Gathering update Zoom will be Thursday, April 11th, again at 7 p.m. Central Time. We'll do 30 minutes of presentation, and then we'll stick around for 30 minutes of office hours to chat with you guys even more. Thank you guys for taking the time to do this for gathering planning. We continue to pray for you guys, for your youth, and for your congregations as you prepare to attend Endure in 2025. If you have questions, please feel free to stick around for office hours or ask your questions in the LCMS Youth Ministry Facebook group, or send us an email at nygregistration@lcms.org. Until then, we will see you guys online, or we'll see you next month.